I had always been the responsible one in our family, while my younger brother Jason got away with everything. I tried to earn my parents' approval through hard work and following the rules. But when they gave him a brand new Tesla for his 18th birthday, and then tried to blame me when he crashed it, something in me finally snapped. I could not believe my own parents would throw me under the bus to protect their golden child. Let me tell you what happened next. Before I start my story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that subscribe button if you want to see how I finally stood up to my family after years of being the scapegoat. Trust me, you will not want to miss what happens next. Growing up in our sprawling colonial home in suburban Connecticut, I always knew there was a clear hierarchy in our family. My father, George, a successful investment banker with a corner office in Manhattan, and my mother, Diane, an interior designer with wealthy clients, had built a comfortable upper-middle-class life for us. But their pride and joy was undeniably my younger brother, Jason. At 24, I had done everything right. I graduated with honors in engineering from a respected university and secured a good position at a reputable firm in the city. I paid my own student loans, maintained a sensible budget, and was saving for my future. Jason, on the other hand, at 18, was the definition of entitled privilege. The contrast between us could not have been more striking. Where I was reserved and methodical, Jason was outgoing and impulsive. While I followed rules, Jason broke them with a charming smile that somehow made everything okay. When we were younger, I thought it was just a phase, that eventually my parents would see his behavior for what it was and correct it. I was wrong. "Fernando, could you help your brother with his science project?" my mother would ask, even though I had my own deadlines to meet. "Fernando, why did you get a B+ in calculus? Jason is struggling to maintain C's, but at least he is trying his best with football practice, taking up so much time." The double standards were clear from early on. When I was caught coming home 15 minutes past curfew in high school, I was grounded for a week. When Jason stumbled and drunk at 3 a.m., my parents would joke about him sowing his wild oats. I still remember when I turned 16 and asked for driving lessons. My father reluctantly took me out on Saturdays, often cutting our sessions short for Jason's games. When Jason turned 16, they hired a professional instructor. Moving back home after college was supposed to be temporary, a way to save money while I built up my emergency fund and looked for my own place. What I did not anticipate was how much worse the favoritism had become. Jason was now preparing for college, though his academic performance hardly warranted the top schools my parents were pushing him toward. But they were determined their star would shine, even if they had to pay full tuition for a name-brand education. "He has such potential," my father would say. "Not everyone is cut out for books like you, Fernando. Jason has people skills. He will go far." I might have continued in this pattern indefinitely, swallowing my resentment and focusing on my own goals, if not for two things that changed my perspective. The first was meeting Amelia, my girlfriend of 8 months. She saw through my family's dynamics immediately. "That is not normal," she said, after witnessing a family dinner where my mother served Jason his favorite meal while I was told to make do with leftovers. "You know that, right?" The second was what happened on Jason's 18th birthday, the day everything began to unravel. I had been dating Amelia for about 8 months when Jason's birthday approached. She was a graphic designer with a sharp eye for detail and an even sharper sense of fairness. She noticed things about my family that I had normalized years ago. "Why do you have to mow the lawn every weekend while Jason plays video games?" she asked one Saturday as I prepared for yard work. I shrugged it off. "That is just how at Island I do not mind." But Amelia minded. And her perspective was slowly showing me what I had been too close to see. As Jason's birthday approached, my parents went into planning overdrive. They rented a tent for the backyard, hired caterers, and invited what seemed like half his high school class. I offered to help partly out of habit, partly because, despite everything I did, care about my brother. We need you to pick up the cake and help set up the tables my mother instructed, and make sure you wear something nice. The Andersons will be there, and you know how important they are to your father's business. I did not point out that I had to take time off work to help with their golden child celebration. I did not mention that on my 18th birthday, we had a quiet family dinner at a local restaurant where my father spent half the evening on business calls. "Sure, Mom," I said instead. "No problem." The day before the party, Amelia confronted me in my bedroom as I ironed my shirt. "Do you even hear yourself? You sound like their employee, not their son. They are my parents, Amelia." "What am I supposed to do?" She sat on my bed, her expression serious. "Stand up for yourself. Just once. See what happens." I laughed it off, but her words stayed with me. Still, I picked up the custom cake, hung decorations, and arranged tables under the hot sun while Jason slept until noon. The morning of his birthday, my parents were practically vibrating with excitement. My mother kept checking her watch, impatient for the moment they had planned. "Is everything ready in the driveway?" she asked my father for the third time. "Yes, dear. The bow is perfect," he replied, equally giddy. I had no idea what they were talking about until Jason finally emerged from his room around 10 a.m., yawning and checking his phone. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," my mother exclaimed, rushing to hug him. "Thanks," he mumbled, barely looking up from his screen. "We have something special for you," my father announced. "Come outside." We all filed out to the driveway, where a brand-new Tesla Model 3 sat gleaming in the sunlight, midnight blue, exactly as Jason had mentioned, wanting months ago. A massive red bow was affixed to the hood. My father held out the key fob, beaming with pride. "Happy birthday, son. You deserve it." Jason's eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. He snatched the key and circled the vehicle, like a predator running his hands along its sleek lines. "This is sick," he exclaimed, opening the door and sliding into the driver's seat. "Check out this touchscreen." I stood frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. When I turned 18 after years of perfect grades and responsible behavior, I received a 7-year-old Honda Civic with 8,9,000 miles on it. Jason, with his C average and 2 underage drinking citations, got a $60,000 electric car. "Fernando, take a picture of Jason in his new car," my mother instructed, pushing her phone into my hands. I complied, mechanically snapping photos, while Jason posed with his unearned prize. Amelia squeezed my arm in silent support. "What do you think?" my father asked Jason proudly. Jason ran his hand over the dashboard. "It is pretty cool, but I really wanted the white one. This blue is kind of basic." Instead of calling out his ingratitude, my parents exchanged glances. "We thought blue would look more sophisticated," my mother explained quickly. "But if you really prefer white, maybe we could see about an exchange." I walked away before I could hear any more, making the excuse of checking on party preparations. Amelia followed me. "Did that really just happen?" she whispered. "Welcome to my world," I replied, the familiar knot of resentment tightening in my chest. The party started at 3 p.m., with dozens of Jason's friends arriving in waves. I recognized many of them from the times they had taken over our house for weekend parties, while my parents were away at their lake house, leaving me to clean up their messes despite my protests. Amelia and I helped serve food and direct guests, playing the role of staff more than family. I noticed a group of Jason's closest friends, the troublemakers from his soccer team, huddled by the side of the house. One of them had a backpack that he guarded carefully, and they kept taking turns going to the bathroom. "They are drinking," I told Amelia, spotting a flask being passed discreetly. "I should tell my parents." "Will they do anything about it?" she asked. I considered this. Probably not, but I should try. I found my father by the grill, proudly telling Mr. Anderson about Jason's soccer scholarship offers. "Dad," I said quietly, "Jason and his friends are drinking. I saw them with alcohol." He glanced toward the group and then back at me. "They are just having fun, Fernando. It is a party. Do not be such a killjoy. But they are underage, and some of them drove here. He sighed heavily. This is exactly your problem. Always by the book. Learn to relax a little. He turned back to Mr. Anderson without another word. I retreated, embarrassed and frustrated. Amelia found me by the food table, filling my plate with distraction rather than appetite. No luck, she guessed. They do not care. They never do when it is Jason. As the evening progressed, the party grew louder. Jason was showing off his new Tesla to his friends, taking groups for quick spins around the block. Each time they returned, they seemed more rowdy. We should go, I told Amelia, around 8 p.m. I cannot watch this anymore. She nodded, understanding. We said brief goodbyes to my parents, who were busy entertaining, and barely acknowledged our departure. Your brother really made out today, Amelia observed, as we drove to her apartment in my old Honda. That car costs more than most people make in a year, and he will probably wreck it within a month, I replied bitterly. But somehow, that will be my fault too. I had no idea how prophetic those words would turn out to be. We spent a quiet evening at Amelia's place watching movies and trying to forget about the blatant display of favoritism I had witnessed. Around midnight, we went to bed, and I fell into a troubled sleep. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake at 2:13 a.m. My mother's name flashed on the screen. "Hello," I answered groggily. "Fernando." Her voice was high-pitched with panic. "There has been an accident. Jason is hurt. You need to come right away." My stomach dropped. "What happened? Where are you?" "Near the lake house. Jason took the Tesla out with his friends." "Please come quickly." The lake house was about 30 minutes from the city, a weekend retreat my parents had purchased 3 years ago. What was Jason doing there in the middle of the night? "I will be there as soon as I can." I promised, already getting dressed. Amelia insisted on coming with me. We drove in tense silence, my mind racing with possibilities. When we arrived at the scene, emergency lights cast an eerie glow through the trees. The Tesla, or what remained of it, was wrapped around a massive oak tree just off the winding road that led to our lake house. The front end was completely crushed, the once sleek vehicle now a twisted sculpture of metal and broken glass. Several police cars, an ambulance, and my parents' Mercedes were parked nearby. I spotted Jason sitting on the back of the ambulance, a paramedic, attending to a cut on his forehead. He looked dazed, but largely unharmed. 2 of his friends stood nearby, also being treated for minor injuries. My parents rushed to me as soon as I stepped out of my car. "Thank God you are here," my mother sobbed, clutching my arm. "It is awful. The car is destroyed." I noted her concern was for the vehicle, not her son who had nearly killed himself and his friends. "What happened?" I asked, looking toward Jason. "They were just having a little fun," my father said defensively. "Boys will be boys." A police officer approached us, notepad in hand. "Are you family?" he asked me. "Yes, I am, Jason's older brother." "I need to ask you a few questions," he said. "We are trying to piece together what happened tonight." Before I could respond, I saw Jason whisper something to my mother, his eyes darting toward me. Her expression changed immediately. "Officer," she said, her voice suddenly firm, "I think there has been a misunderstanding. Fernando was at the party earlier. He was the one who provided the alcohol." I froze, unable to process what I was hearing. "That is right," my father joined in. "Fernando has always been jealous of his brother. He encouraged the boys to take the car out tonight." The officer looked at me skeptically. "Is that true, sir?" "What?" "No. I left the party at 8 p.m. with my girlfriend. I was at her apartment all night until my mother called about the accident." "He is lying," my mother insisted. "He has always been competitive with Jason. He was upset about the car." I stared at my parents in disbelief, unable to comprehend that they were actually trying to blame me for this disaster. Amelia stepped forward. "Officer, I was with Fernando all evening. We left the party early and went straight to my apartment. I can verify his whereabouts. The officer made notes, looking between us and my parents. We will sort this out. The preliminary breathalyzer shows your son was over the legal limit, he told my parents. Way over. And he is underage. That is impossible, my father blustered. Fernando must have spiked his drinks. I stood there, shell-shocked, as my own parents tried to throw me to the wolves to protect their golden child. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. "Dad?" I said quietly. "What are you doing?" He looked at me coldly, his voice low enough that the officer could not hear. "You have always been a disappointment. For once in your life, do something for this family." In that moment, something broke inside me. The last thread of hope that my parents might someday see me, value me, love me, equally snapped completely. Amelia tugged at my arm. "Let's go. There is nothing you can do here tonight." She was right. I allowed her to lead me back to my car, my parents' accusatory stares burning into my back. As we drove away, I realized I was trembling. They wanted me to take the blame, I said in disbelief. My own parents. "They are protecting him like they always do," Amelia replied softly. But this time, they went too far. I nodded slowly, a strange calm settling over me. Yes, they did. The next morning, I woke up on Amelia's couch. After a mostly sleepless night, my phone showed multiple missed calls from my mother and one text that simply read, "We need to talk. Come home." When I arrived at the house, the atmosphere was frigid. My mother was making coffee in the kitchen, my father reading the newspaper at the table. There was no sign of Jason. "Where is he?" I asked. Resting, my mother replied curtly, "He had a traumatic night." I laughed humorlessly. Traumatic. He could have killed someone. My father lowered his newspaper. "Keep your voice down. We need to discuss how we are handling this situation." I stood in the doorway, not taking my usual seat at the table. What is there to discuss? Jason drove drunk and wrecked his brand new car. End of story. "It is not that simple," my father said, glancing toward the hallway to make sure Jason could not hear. "The insurance will not cover it because he was intoxicated. That is an $80,000 loss with all the upgrades we added." And I prompted, "And he could face serious charges," my mother whispered. "DUI, underage drinking, reckless endangerment. It would ruin his future." My father leaned forward. "We have spoken to a lawyer. The best approach is to say the car was taken without permission." By who, I asked, though I already knew the answer. They exchanged glances. "The police already have statements suggesting you were involved," my father said carefully. "If you would just confirm that you gave them the alcohol and suggested they take the car for a joyride, Jason might avoid the worst charges." The audacity was breathtaking. "You want me to confess to something I did not do, to take the blame for his mistake. It would not go on your record," my mother insisted. "We would make sure of that. The lawyer says, with your clean history, you would likely just get community service. And if I refuse," my father's expression hardened, "then you are no longer welcome in this house. Your support from this family ends immediately. No more living here, no help with your student loans, nothing." "I have never supported this family," my mother added, her voice taking on a wounded tone. "Always judging us, thinking you are better than everyone." I stood there absorbing the full weight of their manipulation. This was not new behavior, I realized. This was simply the most extreme version of the dynamic that had governed our family for years. "I need to think," I said finally, retreating to my room. Once alone, I called Amelia, my hands shaking, as I recounted the conversation. "They want you to take the fall," she said, outraged. "That is insane. You cannot do that, Fernando." "I know," I replied, "but they are threatening to cut me off completely." "Would that be so bad? You have your job, your savings. You could stay with me until you find a place." She was right. I had options. I was not the helpless child anymore, desperate for their approval. There is something else you should do, Amelia continued. Gather evidence. Protect yourself. If they are willing to lie to the police, who knows what else they might do? I thought about it. Jason would have texted his friends about their plans. And we have the security cameras at the house that would show when we left the party. Exactly. Document everything. This is not just about family drama anymore. They are trying to pin a crime on you. After hanging up, I checked my phone and found a text from Jason that he had sent during the party, heading to Lake House with the boys after this, taking the new ride for a real test drive. I had not even seen it last night. Then, I remembered the security system my father had installed last year. It recorded everyone who entered and left the house with timestamps. I accessed the app on my phone before my parents could think to block me. There it was clear footage of Amelia and me leaving at 8:06 p.m. Jason and his friends, clearly intoxicated, piling into the Tesla at 1:38 p.m. I downloaded everything and sent copies to Amelia. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a small sense of control returning. There was a soft knock at my door. To my surprise, it was Jason, looking pale and hungover. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. He slipped into the room and closed the door. "Look, I did not ask them to blame you," he said quietly. "That was their idea. But you went along with it." He looked down. I was scared. "The cops said I could go to jail, so you let them throw me under the bus instead." "I am sorry," he mumbled. "I really messed up." I studied my brother, seeing not the golden child, but a scared teenager who had never faced consequences for his actions. In some ways, my parents had failed him worse than they had failed me. "I am not taking the blame for this," I told him firmly. "Not this time." He nodded slowly. "I know. I would not either if I were you." He paused at the door. "For what it is worth, I always thought the way they treated you was messed up." After he left, I sat on my bed thinking I had spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' approval. I had accepted their favoritism, their dismissal, their conditional love as normal. But this crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the academic awards my parents had never celebrated, at the life I had built despite their neglect, and I made a decision. It was time to stand up for myself, whatever the cost. The next day, I put my plan into action. I had spent the night organizing my evidence, the security footage, text messages, phone records, showing my location, and Amelia's written statement. I added photos from the party showing Jason's friends with alcohol that they had brought themselves. I consulted with a criminal defense attorney early that morning, explaining the situation. She was appalled. "They cannot force you to take responsibility for someone else's crime," she assured me. "That would be filing a false report, which is itself a crime." "What should I do?" I asked. "Present your evidence to the police, clear your name, and distance yourself from this situation." And she added gravely, "Consider whether these are people you want in your life going forward." I knew my parents would be meeting with Jason's lawyer that afternoon, the perfect time to confront them all together. I dressed carefully in a crisp, button-down shirt and slacks projecting the image of the responsible adult I had always been. I prepared what I would say, practicing with Amelia over the phone. "Remember, stay calm," she advised. "The moment you get emotional, they will use it against you." "I know," I replied. "For once, I am choosing myself." I arrived at the house just as the lawyer's car pulled into the driveway. My father answered the door, surprised to see me. "We did not think you would be joining us," he said stiffly. "I think this concerns me directly," I replied, following him to the dining room where my mother, Jason, and their lawyer waited. The attorney, a sleek man in an expensive suit, eyed me suspiciously. "Mr. and Mrs. Alvarez, is this the brother you mentioned?" "Yes," my father confirmed. "Fernando might be willing to help with Jason's situation." I placed my portfolio on the table. Actually, I am here to clarify some facts about what happened. My mother frowned. We have already discussed this, Fernando. Either you help your brother or you are no longer part of this family. Before you make threats, I said calmly, you should see what I have here. I opened the portfolio and laid out the evidence methodically. Security footage showing when I left the party and when Jason took the car. Text messages from Jason to his friends, planning their lake house trip. Phone records proving I was at Amelia's apartment when the accident occurred. Witness statements contradicting your version of events. The lawyer looked increasingly uncomfortable as I presented each item. What exactly are you trying to do here? My father demanded, his face flushing with anger. I am not going to be your scapegoat, I said simply. Not anymore. You have two options. You tell the police the truth and clear my name, or I present this evidence myself. You would do that to your own brother, my mother gasped. You were willing to let me take the blame for a crime I did not commit, I reminded her. What did you expect me to do? The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Alvarez, if there has been any attempt to mislead the police, I strongly advise correcting the record immediately. False statements to law enforcement are serious offenses. My father glared at me while my mother began to cry. Jason, surprisingly, spoke up. He is right, he said quietly. This is my fault, not Fernando's. I should take responsibility. The atmosphere in the room shifted. My parents exchanged looks of defeat and resignation. Fine, my father said finally. We will tell the police the truth. But I hope you are satisfied with tearing this family apart, Fernando. I met his gaze steadily. I did not tear anything apart. You did that when you decided I was disposable. The meeting ended shortly after, with the lawyer advising my parents to contact the police immediately to revise their statements. As they discussed logistics, I slipped out and headed to my room to pack my essentials. Jason found me there hovering in the doorway. That was pretty badass, he said, attempting a smile. Standing up to them like that. I continued packing. Someone had to eventually. Where will you go, Amelia's, for now? Then my own place. He nodded, looking younger and more vulnerable than I had seen him in years. I really am sorry, Fernando. For everything. I paused, considering my brother. He was a product of our parents' failures, as much as I was, just in a different way. I do not forgive you yet, I told him honestly. But maybe someday. Take this as a chance to grow up, Jason. They will not always be able to protect you. He nodded solemnly. I know. I am going to do better. Whether he meant it or not, only time would tell. But for the first time, I felt like I had spoken to him as equals, not as the responsible older brother and the coddled favorite. As I carried my bags to the car, my parents watched silently from the front door. I did not say goodbye. Some bridges once burned should stay that way until proper foundations can be rebuilt. Driving away from my childhood home, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to travel on my own terms. 1 month later, I was settling into my new apartment with Amelia. It was small but affordable on my engineering salary, and more importantly, it was mine. Pictures of us exploring the city adorned the walls, replacing the family photos that had always made me feel like an outsider. The legal situation had resolved largely as expected. Jason was charged with DUI and reckless driving. With his clean prior record and good lawyer, he received community service, a suspended license for 1 year, and mandatory alcohol education classes. My parents had to admit their false accusations to the police, though they framed it as a misunderstanding in the heat of the moment. I maintained minimal contact with them, responding to texts, but declining Sunday dinners and family gatherings. Each interaction was on my terms, a boundary I enforced rigidly. Work became a refuge. Without the constant drama of my family life, I thrived, earning a modest promotion and the respect of my colleagues. I started therapy, unpacking years of family dysfunction with a compassionate professional who helped me understand I was not crazy for feeling mistreated. What you experienced is called scapegoating, my therapist explained during one session. It is a common dynamic in dysfunctional families. One child becomes the repository for all blame, while another becomes idealized. I just cannot believe it took me 24 years to stand up to them, I admitted. But you did, she reminded me. That is what matters. My parents tried various tactics to regain control. First came anger, then guilt, then attempts at bribery, disguised as gifts. I recognized each for what it was and maintained my boundaries. Surprisingly, it was Jason who made the most genuine effort to change. He called occasionally not to ask for help or money, but to check in. He had started taking community college classes seriously and found a part-time job. I am trying to pay for the Tesla myself, he told me during one call. Dad says the insurance covered some of it, but I want to take responsibility. That is impressive, I said, meaning it. How are you managing that with school? It is hard, he admitted, but I keep thinking about what you said, about growing up. I never realized how easy I had it until I had to do things on my own. It was a start. I was cautiously optimistic about rebuilding a relationship with my brother, one based on mutual respect rather than the toxic dynamics our parents had created. 3 months after the accident, I agreed to meet my family for dinner at a neutral restaurant. Amelia came with me for support, her hand steady in mine as we entered. The meal was awkward, but civil. My father was more subdued than I had ever seen him, my mother overly cheerful to compensate. Jason, to his credit, maintained the maturity he had been showing in our calls. As dessert arrived, my father cleared his throat. Fernando, your mother and I have been doing some thinking. Perhaps we were not always fair in how we treated you and Jason. It was the closest thing to an apology I expected to get. Perhaps not, I agreed mildly. We would like you to come home for Christmas, my mother added hopefully. The whole family together. I looked at Amelia, then back at my parents. I will consider it. But I need you to understand something. Our relationship has changed. I decide when and how we interact now. I will not be manipulated or made to feel less than anymore. My father looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. We understand, she said softly. We just want a chance. As we left the restaurant, Jason walked us to our car. That went better than I expected, he observed. It is a process, I replied. Trust takes time to rebuild. He nodded thoughtfully. I am glad you stood up to them, Fernando. It changed things for me too. They actually let me fail now, which is weird but good, I think. I smiled, recognizing the first genuine signs of growth in my brother. That is how you learn. Driving home with Amelia, I reflected on the journey of the past few months. One decision, one moment of standing firm, had altered the course of my life and relationships. Are you okay? Amelia asked, squeezing my hand. Better than okay? I replied. For the first time, I feel like I am living my life for me, not for their approval. The scars of being the family scapegoat would take time to heal fully. There would be setbacks and moments of doubt. But I had found my voice and my boundaries, and I would never go back to the person who silently accepted mistreatment. Sometimes the strongest action you can take is simply to stand your ground and say, no more. That one step changed everything for me. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? What gave you the courage to finally say enough is enough? Share your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, setting boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for your well-being. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone going through something similar know they are not alone.